Death Note's one of those stories that leaves a huge hole in your heart when you finish it. As soon as I finished it, I didn't know what to do with my life anymore, and my head was completely shaken, values and views on the world drastically changed, and my emotions all over the place. It's truly an amazing piece of art to both read and observe. In this pre-movie review, I will give you my opinions, criticisms and observations of Death Note before it's released, and have another review when it's out, and see if what I say here holds true from my initial impressions. First, let me give you a quick synopsis of what this story is about. A young student, Light Yagami, is sick of the world rotting around him by criminals and bad people. On one fateful day, a god of death drops a notebook in the human world that Light picks up. If you write someone's name in the book, they die. Being disillusioned with the police's inability to properly convict criminals, he decides to take it in his own hands to bring change and justice to the world and become a god of a new utopia. However, when these killings seem to be attracting the attention of the authorities, world-renowned super detective known only as L decides to intervene and swears to catch Kira for all the senseless murders. It's a cat and mouse game of who will be killed first as the world watches on in the war between Kira and L. Two geniuses, both intent on providing justice to the world. From its beginning as an award-winning manga, it has spawned many different media pieces, from a critically acclaimed anime series, 4 Japanese live-action films, a mini-series leading up to the 4th movie, a Japanese live-action drama series, Nintendo DS games, special edition manga, collectible figurines, various pieces of merchandise from jewelry to replica Death Notes, and even a Korean musical adaptation. However, back in 2011, when I first heard that an American company was interested in making an adaptation of the film, I seriously had my doubts going on past experiences of poorly made adaptations for the Western market, notably the god-awful remake of Oldboy, which was just over the top, relied on violence and shock value, and hired a cast that were not suitable for any of the characters. Over time I got a little more excited that it could maybe be a good thing. It's keeping the franchise alive and getting more people interested that could have missed it the first time. That all changed when I discovered Warner Brothers' intention at the time. They wanted to change Light from having good intentions to bring justice to the rotting world, to him being filled with vengeance. It's unsure what he was vengeful at, but no matter what it was, it would drastically change Light's motivations and purpose, essentially creating an entirely different character altogether. They also wanted to remove Shinigami from it, which would create a terrible domino effect. No Shinigami means no learning of the rules of the note, as Ryuk wrote them in English for Light as it was the world's most popular language. However, if the rule's still written there regardless through other means, it would still mean no ideals. No ideals means no Misamani becoming the second Kira with Light, and so on and so forth. The butterfly effect is endless. Luckily, Shane Black, the director at the time, decided not to approve these changes, and the film did not get greenlit. We dodged a serious bullet there. Adam Wingard would later go on to become the director of the still-planned Death Note movie in 2015, and after a lot of studios presenting themselves to him for the project, Netflix bought the rights to make it. Jeremy Slater was also taken on board to write a redraft of the script. Even though this new film seems to be more vaguely in line with the story of the manga, I still very much have my doubts about it from what I've seen and heard from the trailers and various news outlets. From what I've been subjected to so far, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a fan favourite due to its problematic flaws, character design choice, and over-the-top action sequences. The film has a very dark and eerie tone to it, which is perfect for what it is. This is a movie about someone who kills remorselessly in an effort to clean up a world they believe is rotting due to rampant criminal activity and human selfishness. The darkness and rain give a perfect atmosphere. A storm is coming, literally and metaphorically. The world is going to change through one man's actions. A man who will gladly give his soul so that honest and hard-working people have a life they deserve and can live in peace. As we see in the trailer, cults begin to form to show their devotion and love for Kira, who they see as their savior, with his dispensing of justice on the wicked. We see victims of Kira, criminals laying bloodied on the stained floor, hideous scrawlings on the walls, messages for or possibly by Kira. This gives a large indication of how the world begins to change after Light's actions. Sadly, that's where things begin to stop getting enjoyable. As it emerges, this film seems to be nothing more than a cheesy, growing-up high school drama with an amazing plot awkwardly walked around some angsty teenager with a murderous intent. He is nothing like the Light Yagami from the source material. Now don't get me wrong, I'm all for reboots. I think they're good in a way that lets you see stories from different angles, what-if scenarios, and if things in that world were different. However, this film seems to be unable to decide if it's going to call itself a remake or a reboot, or become something entirely different altogether. One of the things that made this story so thrilling was how slow it happened, which was not a bad thing. It's subtle, it builds, and it keeps its suspense. These two people are at war, a silent, secret war that would be chaos for each of them if their identities were to be discovered by the other. El knows Light is Kira, but needs to provide evidence to prove it and convict him, whereas on the other hand, Light only needs El's name and face, the latter of which he achieves, but the former gives him a massive problem. It's a constant battle of wits against time before one of them will die. And because it moves so slow, it always kept you in suspense. The action scenes were very few and far between. Most of the epic scenes were done through the characters' internal monologues, their personal actions kept hidden, and outsmarting each other until their plan reaches its goal. It turns out that my worries were indeed reasonable, because this suspense does not appear to be in this movie, and is instead replaced with the usual brawn over brains attitude that Western movies tend to apply. It's less about who can outsmart each other, and more about how many crashes and explosions can we fit in this 2-hour film. The director himself said, "It's got nudity, it's got swearing, it's got a ton of violence." He further went on to add that it would also feature a large amount of gore and other crazy things, which has also gone towards the R rating this film has gotten. A scene from the trailer has a van suddenly break, causing the ladder on its roof to fly off and seemingly impale a suspected criminal through the eye, very reminiscent of the Final Destination films. The gore is unnecessary, and that's not what this film is supposed to be. Sure, Light can choose them to die in accidents and such, but we don't need to see it in graphic detail. This isn't The Walking Dead and should not be treated as a horror movie. It should more be treated as a supernatural crime thriller. Swearing is just a completely pointless and needless inclusion, as it serves no purpose at all. The setting is a high school, teenagers are there, teenagers must swear, swearing is part of the American lifestyle? I don't get it. The brawn over brains is more fleshed out when scenes such as a large explosion going off in the middle of a desert is seen, a church steeple collapses with the city crumbling around it, and a really odd scene where Light and Mia are riding on a Ferris wheel before it collapses. The only two reasons I believe that happened was either it was part of one of Light's plans in which he must put himself in a self-controlled, dangerous situation, just like the busjacking when going to Spaceland to get Ray Pember's name, because in the trailer, before the Ferris wheel begins to fall, Ryuk says, "I hope you know what you're doing." Or it's just an excuse of an action sequence to make the movie more exciting. Now if you take a look at the trailer for the first Death Note movie made back in 2006, you will see an undeniably big difference in the genres that both movies are presenting. I don't claim to be an expert on Death Note, but from my standpoint, someone who's read the manga and watched the anime and films, it seems as though the writers only skimmed it whilst watching a Michael Bay movie that's given him inspiration to make his own version. By adding gore, nudity and swearing, you are essentially tearing down what made the show so great. The mistake that he's making is trying to appeal largely to the teenager demographic, where most of the fans of the original manga and anime run would likely be in their 20s at this point, and even older. Sure, I don't blame you for trying to appeal to a younger audience, but it feels embarrassing to see our beloved geniuses reduced to a grungy emo kid and an edgy hooded detective. It reminds me of Jared Leto's portrayal of the Joker in Suicide Squad. It felt too unnecessarily trying to be what adults think kids think is cool now. Even the movie posters look like they were designed by some 14-year-old goth girl on her MySpace account. Now, let's discuss the main cast that has been chosen for the project. Nat Wolff plays the leading anti-hero Light Turner, a name I'm really not fond of, it sounds too default, who finds the notebook and decides to use it for his own purposes. From what I gather too, he has had the same thoughts of despising the people who make the world a miserable place and now has the means to change it. He seemingly first kills a man who has taken people hostage and then decides to kill other criminals. The similarities seem to end with the source material, as he is not the Light Yagami we know. He seems to be more down to earth and relaxed like a regular teenager, but not so well liked as we see him getting his ass kicked when trying to save another student and Mia from being bullied. I'm guessing he's more of a solitary loner type in this film, judging from his obvious weird kid appearance, which is bordering on a teenager trying to kick a drug habit. The original Light Yagami spent a lot of his time alone studying while still being a pretty popular guy and having a few girls interested in him, which he uses to his advantage. He is a tidy, well-groomed and handsome young man who is basically the personification of a grade A student. After becoming Kira, he doesn't show much emotion and is remorseless about his killing of criminals, believing himself to be a god of his new world, and that should anybody oppose him, they will be judged as evil and condemned to death. On a completely personal note, my choice for someone to play Light would have been Charlie Heaton, who gained most fame for being in Stranger Things. As soon as I saw him, I thought he would be the most perfect fit to play the lead role in a Western Death Note. He also bears a large resemblance to Japanese actor Masataka Kubota, who played Light in the 2015 drama series. There is one thing in the trailer that really bothers me the most about him. He and Mia, played by Margaret Qualley, are talking and he blurts out, "We're not the good guys anymore."
We're not the good guys anymore.
This is the most ridiculous line I have ever heard Light say. He believes that he is the savior of the world, the only person who could bring ultimate peace and create a utopia where no evil shall exist. Even after killing numerous innocent people such as the police and FBI, Light still believes himself to be a good member of society. Even when Ryuk mentions to him that killing criminals makes him a murderer, Light says that he's wrong. The arrogance and confidence that Light has is incredible, so to have his character tell Mia, let alone himself, that he isn't a good guy, is giving him unnecessary emotions and makes it feel as though he regrets what he's done. I must say again, I understand how the concept of remakes and reboots happen, but this really seems to be taking a step in the wrong direction that cuts all ties with the source. Light's appearance, personality, operations and ideals have all become so disjointed it is him in name only. First name only. With him being a loner-type character with a seemingly impossible goal of world peace, it would make sense for him to be as careful as possible and keep the secret from the world. After all, he will be history's most notorious serial killer and mass murderer that has ever existed. So it seems really unfeasible for him to reveal his identity, let alone share his power with his love interest, Mia Sutton, the Misa Amane / second Kira of this movie. And this is where Qualley's character comes in. Like with many Western TV shows and movies, it seems as though there always has to be some kind of needless romantic plotline where many of them do not engage on an emotional level, nor do a lot of them even make sense. It feels as though this is one of the requirements in making an American movie, to add some kind of emotional connection that has the audience feel happy or worried for them. In this case, it seems to just be there to appeal to those who enjoy high school melodrama. To me, it just looks cringing. The problem with love interest is that they usually seem to be the ones that cause the heroes to uncharacteristically change their ways or views simply because it would cause their loved one to come to harm, or that the loved one convinced them to change. In this case, Mia Sutton looks like the kind of stereotypical bad, rebellious girl that would try to convince you to start smoking because she thinks it's cool and it's what all the hardcore kids are doing. Her surly and I don't give a crap about the world kind of attitude she gives off just annoys me more, if anything, and is constantly making me think that Light should just write her name in the death note and get on with what he's supposed to be doing, which is changing the world for the better. But nope, since she's the love interest, we have to care about her too, I guess. By telling Light that he is not crazy enough, even if it's a joke, and together that they can change the world, makes it sound like she's doing it more for personal enjoyment than a genuine desire to help Light fulfill his goals. By having her be a fellow student at the school and a cheerleader at that, it will most likely miss out why she fell in love with Kira and by extension Light in the first place, which was because he killed the man who murdered her parents. From the way the director made it sound with included nudity, it's highly likely that she's going to be the desirable, attractive girl that we're supposed to follow blindly. Like I said before, it just seems to be a tacked on romance in a tedious high school drama. Don't even get me started on them having a picnic in a graveyard. Wolf and Qualley I think make an interesting couple to play on screen, but for these roles, they're not a perfect match. If Wolf's character was made less, I'm gonna be the most popular god in school, and more, I should take this very seriously, then he would be a good fit. Light uses and manipulates women, they're nothing but tools for his ultimate goal. This typical love-smitten dramatic teenager just feels bland and not exciting in the slightest, like we've seen his character 100 times before. If you want to see a Light that actually has believable emotional feelings that don't change his character, then watch the Japanese drama series. Honestly speaking, I kinda like the look of Light in this because he looks broken and exhausted, which would make an interesting reaction from using extended interaction with the Death Note, adding to the darkness surrounding the book. But since he looks like that even before he used it, I still think it's just a tough meth addiction. Qualley just seems to not inhabit at all what Misa's character is about. an adoring fan, grateful to Kira who would gladly give her life for him. I really don't know what she is at the moment in this outside of a cliché, rebellious teenage girl. Now there has been a large amount of controversy in casting when it was revealed that Keith Stanfield would play the world-famous super detective. The obvious point being that he's a black actor playing the role of what was initially of Asian origin. Now I have no problem whatsoever of Stanfield playing L, his colour doesn't bother me in the slightest, as long as he can play the role right. But from what I have seen, this is also another character that the film changes too much to even be recognisable as L. L is a safe, cautious, collected and isolated genius who thinks ahead in every situation. His brain is the most powerful weapon that he has, and L uses it to his full advantage, even sacrificing his health to maintain it. Taking the utmost precautions in each scenario, he keeps his identity secret and never appears to anyone in person unless absolutely necessary, and instead has the only man who knows of his identity, Watari, go in his place so he can talk to them through synthetic voices on his computer. When he is made to meet with the select few members of the task force, he regrettably admits defeat, that he's had to reveal his face and meet him in person, putting his life at risk. This does not seem to be the case at all with this new L, who goes out openly in public and basically announces to the world that he is L. He hosts a large police press conference outdoors in front of the media, only wearing a hood and a lower face mask. That added with the fact that he's speaking with his own voice, it seems pretty unbelievable that nobody has yet to be able to discover his identity. Since L is known globally, it would also make sense that criminals know of him too, and him standing on a large public set of stairs make for a perfect assassination site. Just saying. In one scene he's passing by a large group of paparazzi wearing only his mask, which only covers from the nose down, and no hood. Are you really trying to tell me that there is no compulsion that these reporters have to just pull it down and reveal the secret? And they call themselves journalists? Later on we see him losing his nerve and yelling at what appears to be light over the phone. The context is difficult to figure out as it's a heavily edited trailer. And telling him that he will not survive. L then slams the phone down, causing multicolored sweets to scatter about his desk. It's a nice nod to the sweet-toothed original L, but it doesn't disguise the fact that he just lost his temper. L is never seen to lose his temper in that kind of way. Light Yagami, yes, but never him. Even when he and Light get into a fist fight, he keeps his cool and acts unbothered. Honestly, it feels as though Kira can just beat L by taunting him enough that he rips off his hood and asks for a one-on-one. So right now, I do not have high hopes for Stanfield's character either, as there seems to be very little connection on who he's actually based on. During production, there was also claims of whitewashing with the cast, with Asian actors not getting the roles they feel should go to them. Right now, I feel that we are in a time where political correctness and people being offended by things are getting to an extremely annoying level. The 4 Death Note movies that were made in Japan had an entirely Asian cast, because that's where the story was set, in Japan. If you set it in Northern America, then it would be very unusual to have a large portion of the cast being Japanese. If the cast is not written as Japanese by the writer because the movie is not set in Japan, then it should not be complained at. It is their creation and their will. I never saw people complain at The Departed because there were no Chinese actors in Boston, or that there were no Korean actors in Louisiana with Oldboy 2013. The argument falls flat when they misunderstand the meaning of adaptation. I wouldn't expect a Chinese remake of Harry Potter to have a large amount of white people, so why is it so difficult to imagine primarily black and white people to be living in Seattle? With the inclusion of the Shinigami is one of the film's very few high points. Although I'm not entirely taken by the altered look of Ryuk, reminding me a lot of Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy going through a phase, I do appreciate that there are subtle changes to his character. We've seen his character in 3 movies and a TV drama series looking exactly the same, so I think it's a good move on their part to add some minor changes to keep it interesting and refreshing. Another change to him is his voice, as he is now being played by actor Willem Dafoe. After Ryuk's original English voice actor Brian Drummond, I didn't think there could be anyone to match his level of skill at playing this character, but Dafoe does a damn good job, and even had the approval of Drummond himself. This Ryuk also seems to be a little quieter than the last, not giving out funny quips or cute lines, but still retains enough about him to have him both creepy and playful. Since Light and Mir seem to share the same notebook in some kind of weird pottery scene from Ghost, it does make me think that Ryuk will be the only Shinigami in this movie, and that Rem has been cut out completely, once again reinforcing that Mia's character is not like Misa Mane at all, from appearance to personality to backstory. Speaking of cutting characters out, it seems that we will not also see people such as half of the task force, Mello, Nier, any other Shinigami, Naomi Misora, Ray Pember, or pretty much any of the characters who made an impression in the story. It seems to focus solely on Light, Elle and Mia, which is a good decision in my opinion, as movies have made the mistake before about trying to fit too much into a 2-hour film and ended up making a jumbled mess. By keeping its cast small, it's allowed itself to be more open and free, spend more time on character development and increase the amount of time the three main are on screen. If any sequels were planned then it would be alright as they'd have more time, but for a one-off movie, a smaller cast is a better choice. When the film is released on Netflix on August 25th, I shall be watching it, and I hope that I am pleasantly surprised by what I see and somehow most of what I interpret to be what the film is about is wrong. However, if most of what I say is correct or near enough, then I feel like many fans like myself won't like it an awful lot as it deviates too much from the true meaning of Death Note. It rids the mind against mind battle race and loses its messages of human value and preconceived notions about right and wrong. Was it really the best time to make a Death Note adaptation? I don't really think so. Japan already has it covered over there with their great drama series, and last year they released Death Note Light Up the New World with a mini-series about the 3 characters in it. I think if America was to create their own Death Note adaptation, it should have been back in 2011 to 2013, when there wasn't anything happening around it, and it could have possibly been an interesting resurgence. But delaying it and mutilating the story just stuck it in development hell where it stayed for 6 years, only to be overshadowed by a more interesting and exciting movie released a year beforehand and beat them to the punch. If you haven't seen or read the original story, then I hope you do get an enjoyable experience out of this film, and it encourages you to see and read the work done by the 2 manga geniuses Tsugumi Ohba and Takeshi Obata. They deserve all the recognition and to know that their work is still being appreciated and talked about today.
So, what are your thoughts and opinions about the film?